Today's episode is brought to you by Forvis Mazars.
SoundCartel.
From SoundCartel, I'm Nicole Goodman, and this is Business Essentials Daily. Australian small businesses owe the tax office on average $21,000 each. It's a huge burden that isn't helped by the fact that the ATO is in the process of cracking down on debtors. CEO and founder of Grow Capital, Gus Gilkeson, says that although the tax office went easy during COVID and the recovery, it is certainly time to talk to your accountant about how to head off the demands. Gus describes the extent of the problem to Jeff Waters.
Business debt since 2019 owed to the tax office has more than doubled. Some of the estimates we've been hearing, 2019 was around 26 billion. It's now north of 50.
Wow.
Yeah, and about 65% of that is owed by small business in Australia. So if you look at the number of small businesses, is about 2.5 million is the estimated amount of SMEs in Australia. So that's about roughly $21,000 owed on average by each small business in Australia to the ATO.
Goodness me. So what does this mean to small businesses, and what should I do and how should I prepare?
One of the biggest challenges we're seeing for small businesses is that a number of the notices that they're receiving from the ATO, they're being received late. So small businesses owners are busy and they don't check their mail every single day, a lot of them. So they won't get their mail for a week. They'll open their mail and then they'll have a director's penalty notice that they had 3 weeks to respond to, but they've lost a week already because they haven't opened. So communicating fast with your accountant and the ATO is a really important piece. Non-communication is a really bad strategy. We've seen that go bad for a number of businesses, and sometimes it's just too late to help. We've found the ATO, from what we have seen, to be fairly reasonable in most cases, as long as the business owners are making an effort to bring the outstanding tax debts back into order. Some of the differences that we've seen recently as opposed to in previous years is that ATO are now asking for cash flow forecasts to support any proposed payment plan. So if you owed, $21,000, you're a small business, you owed that to the tax office and you said, I want to pay a 12th of that for the next 12 months in a row to pay that down. They generally say, that sounds fine. Here's the agreed payment. Please make your first payment and off you go. What they've been doing now, because a lot of those payment plans have actually defaulted with cash flow challenges, what they're now asking for is cash flow forecasts to support that.
Sounds like a lot of work at a troubling time for the small business.
Yeah, that's right. And a lot of small businesses don't do cash flow forecasting. So that's probably a reasonable tip if you're a small business is start preparing a cash flow forecast. There's a lot of software that integrates into accounting platforms seamlessly these days. So there's Fathom, there's Float, there's a number of others that bolt straight into any of the big accounting platforms these days that you can literally just a press of the button, you can generate a cash flow forecast.
Wow.
And you can sensitize different parts of that to see where the business is going to be in the coming sort of 12 to 24 months.
Let's go there. What would happen if either I didn't or I couldn't pay?
If you can't pay and you can't demonstrate a way to pay, then the ATO will generally proceed to recover those outstanding monies, and that could include winding up your business. So, depending on what the type of debt is, if it's outstanding BAS payments or superannuation payments, for example, the ATO will issue what's called a director's penalty notice, and that actually makes you liable as a director for that debt as well. So you could be personally, even if you wound up your business, the ATO could chase you personally for that debt. And recently we've actually seen that extended to other parts of outstanding tax as well, which is pretty unusual. So some of the collections tactics or the pressure to pay on small businesses has been quite, let's call it, fairly aggressive.
That's possibly an understatement, but thank you for saying that. Now, do you have any tips for small businesses that want to keep the ATO sweet to make them, feel good in the relationship?
Yeah, absolutely. Don't lie to them. That's a big one. The ATO are not silly, and they're generally talking with your accountant or your financial advisors a big one. So if you have a significant tax issue, you would also be, I'd probably say, to talk to a tax specialist. So there's a number of groups out there. Tax Assure, one of them in New South Wales. There's a number of others that all they do is specialise in helping with tax debt. So if that's a big problem, work with your accountant, financial advisor who's lodging your returns and your BASs, or your bookkeeper. And then if there is an outstanding tax issue and it's fairly significant, then you'd probably be well placed to talk to one of those specific tax advisors, negotiators as well, and formulate a plan that you can stick to and communicate that effectively to the ATO.
Can I ask for a personal opinion here? Do you think that this apparent crackdown by the ATO is fair?
I think the ATO has been quite lenient, particularly since 2019 COVID times. So for a period of years, they have effectively acted as a bank for a lot of businesses. So, they haven't been enforcing, BASs paid on time. They haven't been saying your tax is outstanding, you need to pay it. I actually think that's a bit of a double-edged sword, because a lot of small businesses have been using that as a bank, but they haven't realised the impact of that at the back end, which is, if you spend that money, then you need twice as much to pay it back, or whatever it is, So I think they were trying to be fair in COVID times. I think some of the behaviour we've seen recently has been really aggressive, and some of it nonsensical as well. So if a business gets wound up, in a lot of cases, particularly if that business has debt, the ATO is essentially an unsecured creditor. So in a lot of cases, they wouldn't get a lot of money out of that if, the assets are sold and the secured creditors are paid. So
it just becomes punitive rather than helpful.
It becomes completely punitive, and it doesn't help anyone. They don't get their money because the business is wound up, it can't trade. And, the business owners all of a sudden walking the streets looking for something to do to make money to survive. Everyone loses. So I think, is that fair, those types of scenarios? No, they're not fair at all, in my personal opinion. And I just don't think they make any sense. I have seen, for the most part, though, the ATO have been very reasonable if the communication is clear and they can see that you're making an effort to work with them, and within the best of your ability.
That was Gus Gilkeson, CEO of Grow Capital. Business Essentials Daily is a SoundCartel podcast. Producers are Nick Schildberger, Chris Ashmore, Jeff Waters and myself. Technical production by Pete Letts. I'm Nicole Goodman. Thanks for listening. We'll bring you more B Daily next week. SoundCartel. This episode was brought to you by Forvis Mazars. To find out more, visit forvismazars.com/au. That's FORVISMAZARS.com/au.